What happened to all the great arcade-style racing games? We used to have Burnout, Midnight Club, Ridge Racer, and even Blur, but now it seems the closest we get to this style of aggressive racer is The Crew. Where did all the arcade racers go? I'm not sure I'd call Burnin Rubber 5 HD a great racing game, but when you're dying of thirst, even toilet water sounds good. It's basically Burnout with guns, a killer combination that, while extremely rough around the edges and nowhere near as good as Criterion's racing franchise, is still better than nothing. If you're wondering how you could have possibly missed so many Burnin Rubber sequels, then you're probably like me and have a blind spot for browser games. This comes to us from Xform Games, a publisher best known for embedding their free titles onto their popular website. Now they've brought the long-running Burnin Rubber series to Steam for the first time ever, and the results are a slightly better than average arcade-style racing game. With 36 events to compete in, several race modes, and a bunch of boss fights, there's actually quite a bit of content in Burnin Rubber 5 HD. For the most part, the idea is to come in first, even if that means blowing up the competition with missiles, flamethrowers, and laser guns. Other events will play into the combat, such as having you trying to shoot down a bunch of opponents before they get you. Although we've seen a lot of these ideas in other arcade racers, Burnin Rubber does something that you don't see very often. Instead of going solo in the combat races, you'll occasionally be paired up with 3 different cars, all of which you can switch between at a push of a button. It's such a simple idea, but it changes how you approach the takedown events. You'll also be able to customize and equip different weapons on each of the cars, adding that extra layer of depth that I wasn't expecting. Now, beyond the team challenges, Burnin Rubber 5 HD plays out pretty much as you would expect. There are 36 events to compete in that'll take you through the desert, into the snowy hills, underneath a city, and onto the freeway in the middle of the night. It doesn't have an especially large selection of tracks, but they all look a little different and there are hidden shortcuts that you can use to your advantage. Thankfully, the combat is a lot more varied than the stage selection. You start out with the normal guns and missiles, but will eventually be able to equip all kinds of high-powered weapons on the top, sides, and even hood of your car. You can equip 3 different weapons in all, which includes a special attack that'll often put your car in autopilot and change you to a first-person perspective. You'll also be able to replenish your weapons by picking up colored items scattered across the course. The good news is that Burnin Rubber 5 HD gets a lot of the basics right. The action is fast, there are a lot of weapons to choose from, and the cars are generally easy to control. Unfortunately, I wasn't as excited about the track designs. I like that we're given several different backgrounds, but the stages themselves are often short and kinda bland. These aren't the long, winding, and imaginative courses we saw in Burnout 3 Takedown, but rather bite-sized events that have a hard time standing out. Sadly, this is not the only indication that you're playing a port of an old browser game. Burnin Rubber 5 HD looks and plays the part, but I could never shake the feeling that there was something a little off. The cars lack weight, the handling is loose, the computer AI is ridiculously stupid, and there's never a good sense of speed here. It reminds me a lot of the budget titles we used to see from Activision, where it was painfully clear that corners were cut to make it onto store shelves at a price you couldn't resist. This is a $10 game that feels exactly like a $10 game. While it never comes close to hitting the highs of games like Burnout and Midnight Club, Burnin Rubber 5 HD does just enough right to be a fun arcade-style racing game. It's rough around the edges and often feels like a budget title, but what it lacks in polish, it more than makes up for with content. And more than anything else, this game just makes me want to see what Burnin Rubber 6 might look like. Bring it on, Xform. Hey, thanks for watching our review. So here's the question of the day. What's your favorite arcade-style racing game? And you know, it can actually be an arcade game, like Daytona USA. I'm partial to a lot of the Burnout sequels, but I also really dig Wipeout, the Omega Collection. Does that count? In other news, we'll be back shortly with a review of a game called Indecision, followed by this week's second racing game, Rally Racers. I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,